Well, thank you all for being here today. My name is Esther Agbaje, and I represent House District 59B, which covers a part of downtown Minneapolis and North Minneapolis. This year, I have the honor of serving as one of the co-chairs of the Posse Caucus for the session. This afternoon, the House DFL Posse Caucus is committed to equity in core areas to advance the needs of Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities in the state of Minnesota. With an unprecedented surplus of more than $17 billion, the Posse Caucus will pursue funding initiatives that will specifically support underinvested and under-resourced communities in the state of Minnesota. Throughout the session, the Posse Caucus is committed to an equity goal that 20% of the surplus funding be dedicated to BIPOC communities across capital investment, housing, education, workforce and economic development, and the arts. BIPOC Minnesotans make up 20% of the population of Minnesota, yet we are overrepresented in disparities in wealth, income, home ownership rates, incarceration, school discipline, test scores, air quality, life expectancy, and the list goes on. The history has shown that when we do not invest in our communities and we continue to delay by delivering on their needs, we set our people up for failure. But this session, we want to significantly rectify that proposition and set our communities up for success. We will be pursuing equitable funding and critical capital investment needs to support BIPOC communities, NGOs, and small businesses. In economic development, we are seeking meaningful investment to ensure that BIPOC Minnesotans can learn necessary skills for living wage-paying jobs and careers. These investments will also support BIPOC entrepreneurs as they create jobs throughout the state to employ more people, especially people in their own communities. Education and housing are foundational elements for any person to thrive in Minnesota, but those have been two areas where resources continue to be scarce for our BIPOC communities. We are seeking funding that will help with continued access to home ownership, housing affordability, and ensuring that BIPOC folks are not cost burdened with housing. Similarly, in education, our BIPOC student resources have been limited. We will be pursuing funding for education support for students who may need housing support, meals at schools, and enriched after-school programs. We will also continue to find ways to support BIPOC teachers so that more students can see and learn from people who look like them. Our funding goal is what will help us secure further promotion of BIPOC people and families in Minnesota so they can thrive. Representative Frazier will now discuss more of our policy goals within the public safety and justice reform areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Agbaje, for laying that out. I think you did a great job of synthesizing and setting the table for what our agenda will be for this session. Representative Cedric Frazier, District 43A, which is in the northwest suburbs, the cities of New Hope and the city of Crystal, respectively. So I'll talk just a bit about, we've been having a conversation around public safety, community safety, started before I became a legislator. A lot more emphasis on it with the murder of George Floyd. There was a lot of work done. We had the George Floyd Police Reform Act that passed with a lot of the work from previous members of the Posse Caucus, Representative Marina Moran, Representative Ruth Richardson, Representative Carlos Mariani, and other Posse Caucus members that were here at that time. I want to thank all my colleagues for being here today. As you can see, the Posse Caucus is growing. We are becoming more reflective of what the state of Minnesota and this country looks like, and that's a good thing. Representation is important. From a public safety, community safety perspective, we are already moving bills that are going to be very impactful in this area. House File 25, which is a public safety funding bill, will dedicate $300 million of funding to community crime prevention and intervention programs, as well as law enforcement, to invest in the tools that they need to ensure that communities are safe for all Minnesotans around the state. We're also moving quickly House File 55, which is authored by formerly Chair, by Representative Ruth Richardson, the Missing and Murdered African American Girls and Women Office, which is also very important. As Representative Agbaje talked about, we have huge disparities when it comes to our particular communities. That office will deal with the disparities of missing and murdered African American women and girls. A large number of those cases go unsolved or not investigated as they should, so we're putting resources there. We also have House File 90, which is being authored by Posse Caucus colleague, Chair Jamie Becker-Finn in the Judiciary. It's the funding for public defenders. We're looking to fund them at the levels that they should be funded. It is a constitutional obligation that we fund that and provide those resources for poor folks for criminal defense, and we're going to fund that appropriately. And we're also looking to fund legal aid funding, which is for low-income individuals that are facing situations in our criminal justice system. That's just a few of our focuses, but we're looking to make sure that we adequately fund areas in public safety and criminal justice to provide for the reforms we need so that no matter what you look like, no matter where you come from, you will get adequate representation in those areas, and we'll make sure we keep our communities safe. I will step aside and introduce Representative Samantha Sensor-Murrah to talk more about other areas in the area of public or education policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Frazier. My name is Samantha Sensor-Murrah. I am the representative from 63A, South Minneapolis, and I'm proud to stand here today with my colleagues in the Posse Caucus and speak to our education priorities. We know that with the large surplus this year and all that our young people, especially our Indigenous students and our people of color students, have been through over the last few years, we need to take that funding and invest back into our communities in creating educational institutions that can serve all students and all families. We know that we come from a state with some of the deepest disparities related to education, and we have a once-in-a-generation chance to change that. We put this legislation together from our perspective as many of us as parents of students of color, as educators of color, and all of us from our experience as former students of color. One of the things that we are most excited about championing this year is the Increased Teachers of Color Act. This pivotal piece of legislation brought forward this year by Chair Horan Hassan will change who is in front of the classroom. We know who is in front of the classroom, who is teaching our young people matters, and we know that right now there is a disconnect between who's in the front of the classroom and who our students of color are. The Increased Teachers of Color Act will bring much needed investment to ensure that not only students of color, but all students around our state can benefit from the brilliance of bringing more teachers of color into the classroom. And this piece of legislation will also ensure that we have the support so that we're not only recruiting teachers of color to the classroom, but we're really giving the support so that those teachers can thrive. We also know that what students are learning in the classroom matters. We have a few bills this year to really tackle our curriculum and ensuring that all students around our state are getting the curriculum that is meeting their needs. One piece of legislation that I am proud to be putting forth this year is the Ethnic Studies Bill, which has been carried in the past by members of this caucus, including Representative Frazier. This bill will ensure that all students see themselves reflected in the curriculum and that all students in Minnesota are learning accurate and honest versions of U.S. history. And finally, we are advocating for deep wraparound supports within schools for our students and families. We are proud to be supporting Representative Samantha Vang's Full Service Community Schools bill, which should be moving through the Education Committee shortly. We know that many of our students have needs that don't stop at the classroom walls, and full-service community schools can help meet those needs so that students can be in school and ready to learn. We are also supportive of other investments, such as universal school meals for all, which is passed out of the Education Finance Committee today. And we're also interested in supporting legislation within higher education that would ensure that we are breaking down some of the barriers to access for higher education, including free tuition to two-year schools for our students. So those are some of the policies that we are interested in championing relating to education this year. I'm now going to call up my colleague, Chair Noor, who's going to talk about our health and equity policies.
Good afternoon. It's glad to see our new members getting on the rolls and moving with heavy bills that we need to be enacting. My name is Mahmoud Noor. I'm a state representative for District 60B. Health inequities result in adverse health outcomes for BIPOC communities. Our communities are more than twice as likely to be uninsured, experience the highest mortality rates, and also impacted by the climate change disproportionately. The time is now to reduce health disparities, increase individual, family, and community resilience. We're proposing to fully support continuous eligibility for children up to age 6. We are also going to be supportive of a bill that will create continuous eligibility for children from age 6 through 20, without the disruption, so that we can address the ongoing Medicaid churn that many of you may hear soon. We are also proposing to open up Minnesota Care for undocumented immigrants. Quite frankly, we spend more in terms of emergency medical assistance compared to paying through the Minnesota Care for all the undocumented immigrants. We need to start investing in maternal health care and climate resilience. Likewise, we need to have a disaggregated data so we can know exactly where the disparities are and we're able to tackle those issues accurately. Finally, but not the least, we need to be aware of what is happening with the Supreme Court with ICWA. That is the Indian Child Welfare Act. We're going to step up boldly in order to make sure that we protect our kids and making sure that we have good policies that protect the indigenous kids. Likewise, we want to make sure that our families are staying together without disrupting at all. And quite frankly, health disparities is a matter of life and death. We have the resources to take care of every community in our state. It's time for our state to focus on equity and equitable outcomes for all, regardless of who you are, where you live, where you come from, the skin of your color. This is a matter of now, rather than pushing things on the sideline. I hope you will see the value of bringing a state where everyone is included. Thank you so much. I would like to welcome my colleague chair, Jay Zhong, to speak on economic development.
Zhong, and thank you. I want to share with you all that Chair Hassan and I and my colleagues here, we are working on to address the wealth gap in our Black and brown communities. We have had several legislations introduced to address our workforce, to supporting small businesses. We know that during this pandemic, many of our BIPOC businesses have been hurt. And so we are going to continue to address these disparities within our communities. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from the community about how we can work together.
Just to wrap up here, again, thank all of my colleagues that have spoken, and thank again to all my colleagues that are here standing with us in solidarity today. We've talked about the deep disparities that we have in our state, and particularly for communities of color, our Black, brown, and indigenous folks. But what I can tell you is that the policies that we're working on, when you start to cure these inequities and these disparities, it helps lift up everybody. It will make the entire state better for everyone in Minnesota. And so we're looking forward to moving forward, getting these things done to create a better space and a better state for the next generation of Minnesota. And with that said, I'll close there and I'll take any questions if you have them. Yeah.
I do have a question in terms of both capital investment and economic development.
Yeah.
What work specifically is being done to make sure that BIPOC-owned businesses in the Lake Strait University area are being retained and repaired? Because I do know from the community organizing that there is a fear that these areas can be kind of gentrified in new ways, and all of those buildings that were lost can become, lost to the community.
Thank you for that. Chair Lee, you want to?
Thank you for the question, Representative Fu Lee from District 59, North Minneapolis. Regarding the corridors that were impacted by civil unrest, we are working with Chair Hassan, Chair Zhong, to see if we could come up with a package to ensure that if we are going to help out those businesses, whether it's through their bricks and mortar infrastructure or through some of the soft costs of their supply and not being covered through insurance or being underinsured, that they have the support that they need, and understanding that gentrification is a real issue for our community. That's where we're soliciting input on. If we're going to make investment, how do we have good policy in place to make sure that the state of Minnesota is not going to lead our community members towards a path of actually driving them out from where they are currently living.
Thank you.
How, Susie Jones, WCCO Radio. So the governor came out with his budget yesterday.
Yeah.
How much of what you're proposing is already in that budget, or is this quite different from the budget? Kind of talk about how those two may or may not. fit together.
Yeah, I'll jump in if there's anything my colleagues want to add. Please jump in. There are some of the things in that budget, like, for example, the missing and murdered African-American girls and women. That is in the governor's budget. So there are things within the budget. There are resources for public safety that are in the budget that we agree with or we have in the bills that we are moving forward or pushing forward on or advocating for. But there are some differences, and that's okay. That's a part of this press, what this process is for, right? The House is going to move forward with their things, the Senate is going to move forward with their things, and the governor is going to have his ideas about what's going to make Minnesota good for everyone, and we're going to come together and we're going to figure that out and move forward together.
So you have a lot of these bills that deal specifically with the things you've just spoken about. The bills are attached to them and they're in the process.
Correct.
There's nothing that hasn't been introduced yet.
There are some things that haven't been introduced yet. We are under the understanding there's a lot of bills that have been requested to be drafted and jacketed. Our reviser has a little bit of lag, but so there will be some things that are coming that are not there yet.
Okay.
Representative Frazier, do you have any examples of how increased public defense spending in BIPOC communities would look after the state has already reported its findings of public defense disparities?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is when we can increase the funding for public defense, you're going to see more lawyers hired. It's going to lower the caseloads, which means there's going to be better representation. There are some cases that individuals are taking. Most cases are resolved through plea deals. You will see some of those cases more rigorously represented by attorneys when they have lower caseloads and they're able to spend more time with those clients. And in many cases, let me give you an example. There are some cases where the lawyer doesn't get the time to look at the footage from body cameras. And what we've learned in some cases on appeal, when you take a look at that footage, there are things that may absolve the individual of the crime that they're actually accused of. So we're looking at things like that. When you give the lawyer the actual ability and time to actually adequately prepare for that case and go over the evidence, you will have outcomes that would be more equitable.
Thanks a lot.
Can I ask a quick question off topic, but not really off topic? Tomorrow, the Senate is going to vote on the Crown Act and Juneteenth. As a caucus, your response to that, your hopes and...
I'll take that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So
Just say and spell your first and last name.
Esther Agbaje, ESTHER-AGBAJE. So we are very excited about the Crown Act. It was one of the first posse-backed bills that was up on the House floor this year, a couple weeks ago. We're very excited that the Senate is that we have a partner in the Senate to finally take it up, and we are hopeful for its passage tomorrow. Same with Juneteenth. Representative Ruth Richardson is carrying it for us here in the House. We plan to have that up fairly soon as well, and we're thankful that the Senate is probably going to be first on that before us. But those are two very big things that affect the Posse Caucus, that affect Black Minnesotans in particular, but all Minnesotans, to make sure that we are uplifting everyone in the state. And I think, any other questions?
You have time for one more question.
I think we're good. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.